Hello everybody and welcome to the YouTube character profile upload of Julie Carp. Julie. Gemma, we aren't going to talk about Julie this week because she got a little mention on this week's Coronation Street, didn't she? She's been corresponding with Brian Packham, ex-lover.
My Julie.
We're going to be talking about my Julie today, and then how much we loved her, really. Now, this is mostly going to be a little flashback to episode 26 of the podcast, I think. I've just looked, but I've completely forgotten. 26? 29? 26 of the podcast when we profiled her first.
We were very laissez-faire.
Yeah, this is one of our very early ones.
Like, these days when we do a character profile, we kind of like fill in all the leaves on the trees, but this was very much a quick sketch.
I think that's how it was back in the early days. That's why we were able to do podcasts in about an hour and a half rather than the 3+ hour epics that we do these days.
If you don't want detail, don't come to us.
Well, we're going to play that first character profile now, and little did we know back then that we would only have a couple of years left of Julie Carp to carp on about. So we'll come back at the end and fill you in on what happened next. Okay, so our character profile this week is Julie Carp. She's been a very good maid of honour, so we thought we'd have a look over a couple of years in the street so far. She's played by Katie Kavanagh. Julie was born in 1977. She's half-sister to Eileen Grimshaw, and she first appeared on the 25th of April 2008. Since then, she's been in just over 450 episodes. So we've got a bit of backstory about Julie first, which didn't appear until a couple of years into her stint in the show. But Eileen's friend when she was little, Paula Carp, who was at the time a flirty 14-year-old, seduces and sleeps with Eileen's 37-year-old father, Colin. And this was covered up from Eileen for many years, but unbeknownst to Colin, Paula was pregnant with Julie. Cut to 2008, Julie appears in The Rovers waiting for her boyfriend and saying about how wonderful he is and he's this fantastic guy, and we're all like, who are you? Who's this boyfriend you're talking about? And then Kurt walks in and he's like, oh hello, you made it then. So this is the first sort of storyline with Julie, was that she was girlfriend to Kirk. I didn't think they were very well suited to each other at all at the time, and I was like, no, get away, who's this new character? But since then,
she was balmy, wasn't she?
She's utterly balm pot. Yeah, well, she still is, but we've kind of grown to love her. Also in 2008, there'd been frequent clashes between Julie and Fizz, sort of reminiscent of now.
Yeah, she was jealous, wasn't she? Because she thought Fizz wanted to take Kirk back.
Yeah, but eventually, kind of that mellowed out, and she moved in with Fizz and Chesney and all that lot there.
Gets a job at the factory like everyone.
Yeah, if you're a woman in Coronation Street, you get a job at the factory.
And if you're a man, you own a business.
Yeah.
Sexism!
She was also involved that year in pushing Fizz to reconcile with John Stape because she thought that he was a nice man.
I'll tell you one thing about Julie, and you can't convince me otherwise. She is an excellent judge of character.
So the next year, by this time, Julie was supervisor at the factory, and Tony asks Julie to
Tony Gordon, the evil Scot,
asks her to sack one of her colleagues. But she couldn't bring herself to do it, so we get to kind of see the nice caring side of Julie again that we're all used to. And she said, no, it's alright, I'll go. But then Luke Strong, remember him? He'd taken over Carla's share of the factory at the time, kind of saved her from self-sacking, or whatever you'd call it, redundancy.
Self-sacking.
So by later on in that year, she's beginning to tire of Kirk, because he's
he's Kirk.
He's Kirk, exactly. There was a bit of a pregnancy scare. Well, it was a scare for her because she didn't want a baby from Kirk. He did, and he was gutted to find out that in the end it was negative.
Which is sad, really, because poor Julia, I bet she would give anything to even have Kirk's baby now.
I know. She's there kind of wanting to split up with Kirk, but not wanting to hurt his feelings. And I remember her utter shock when he, out of the blue, comes up and says, I think we should break it up. We've obviously been drifting apart. Which is kind of
quite wise sometimes.
Occasionally.
Yeah. So she becomes interested in Jason, even though neither of them know they're actually related, and for some reason they sleep together.
Yeah, they have a night of passion. The truth about Eileen and Julie being half-sisters comes to light not long after that, when Paula Carp, this old friend of Eileen, comes into the programme and discovers that Jason and Julie are seeing each other. I can't remember whether they slept together or not, to be honest. I think maybe they didn't, but I might be wrong. Maybe someone can tell me with that. not long after that, Colin Grimshaw, who had also come into the programme just for this little storyline, and had been courting Rita for a bit, died of a stroke. Oh no, he didn't die straight away. He had a stroke, and by this time, everyone sort of had totally shunned Colin because of him sort of abusing Paula
with a 14-year-old child.
Yeah. And so, but Julie's there, like saying, "Oh, it's my dad. I've never known him. I want to get to know him, whatever he's done." So she visits him in hospital and everything. But he later dies of a second stroke. So that's the end of that.
Julie's like a moth to a flame, isn't she?
Whenever like there is with drama and tragedy,
yeah, she's there burning her wings.
Yeah.
2010, she starts to work with Eileen's boyfriend, who was a child entertainer, who's called Jesse.
Mm-hmm.
He's quite a famous actor, I think. He's sort of like a character actor, isn't he?
Yeah, I was looking at Jesse on Corripedia last night, and it said that he was a comedian that came into it.
In other soaps?
I don't remember. He might have been.
Anyway,
he was a cowboy, wasn't he? That was his act.
And she was his, not politically correct at all, sidekick higher lower.
Yeah, I think Eileen.
The Indian squaw.
There was another higher lower, and then Eileen had to take over, and then Julie did when Eileen couldn't or wouldn't do it, and it turned out that Julie was actually pretty good at doing it.
She was very good at it, and Eileen got jealous.
I can totally imagine Julie sort of loving children.
I can remember her doing it.
Yeah.
They have to carry on doing it together in secret because of Eileen's jealousy.
Yeah, she thinks that Jessie fancies Julie.
But it turns out she was correct because he makes a pass at Julie and then the pair of them chase him off the street.
Yeah, and I was glad to see the back of him because apart from a couple of funny scenes with his parrot, he was a totally dull character.
In October, she meets and starts dating the fabulous Brian Packham.
Yeah, but at this time, this is when the whole Colin Fishwick saga was going on. So John was trying to had told Brian that he was actually Colin Fishwick, and he didn't like the fact that Brian was spending more time around the street, so he tried to split Julie and Brian up by
he was still married.
Yeah, he tells Brian's wife, and she comes into the restaurant or the bistro or wherever they were, and then sort of Julie's like, "Oh, you're still married," and storms off.
Poor Julie.
Yep.
In 2011, she bumps into Brian again, and she still has feelings for him. And Fizz tells her that she and John split them up on purpose, and they end up reuniting.
Yeah, and also that year she discovered that she and Eileen are related to Dennis Tanner. He'd just come back into the programme at that point because Colin Grimshaw's father was Elsie Tanner's father. So a little bit of a tenuous link there.
Colin Grimshaw's father was Elsie Tanner's father?
Oh no, cousin. Colin Grimshaw's father was Elsie Tanner's cousin. So there's a bit of a link there.
Why?
Well, they just wanted to make it a link to Elsie on the past. It was just a bit of nostalgia, I think. I don't mind it really. It was one of these silly coincidences. So
well, why don't they just make everyone related then?
They almost are, aren't they? In 2012, Julie thinks that she's pregnant with Brian's baby, and he's quite out of character, accuses her of having an affair.
Well, he's got good reason for that. He's had a vasectomy.
Yeah, but it turns out that actually if you have a vasectomy, it's not 100% accurate. So they're like, "Oh, okay, you are pregnant and it's mine." But alas, Julie has a growth on her ovaries, which she has to have removed, and she'll never be a mum. Unless it's a foster mum. It is, because out of all the women on the street, she's the one. Well, actually, I can think of two women that make really good mums. Who? Julie and Hayley.
Aww.
But none of them could be.
No. Oh, I
Tragedy.
really want Julie to have a baby. I can just imagine her, how excited she'd be with her nursery, picking out colours, going, "Oh, Brian, we better get yellow in case it's a boy or a girl.
She'd be a really...
I don't want to know until it's born."
She'd be a really full-on mum. She'd be like reading up all about it. I think she'd be worried about any time that it looked like it was going to be else.
I want Julie to be my mum.
Yeah, I'll tell you,
it's
mum.
Too late. It's too late. I've been born.
So Julie is a fantastic character. She's only been in it a few years, but I hope she's in it for years to come. I can see her and Brian as... I'd like to see them as a long-lasting Corrie couple. Cause
I don't care about Brian.
I think Brian's hilarious. They're like...
I don't like him because he's every time he talks about schools.
Yeah.
It annoys me.
I don't mind school stuff on Corrie.
No.
However wrong they are and however little idea they've got about what school's actually like.
Don't get me started. This could go on for another hour.
I think that Julie and Brian could be like Stan and Hilda. They've definitely both got shades of them, I think.
I think Julie is got two times the amount of personality that Brian's got.
But really?
Yes.
It's only because they don't give Brian a chance to be in it. He's never in
that
it.
doesn't make any difference. He's still nowhere near as interesting. It doesn't make a difference whether it's because they're not real people, Michael. They're only going to be in it as much as
They
they're
need to give him a
written in.
chance. Some of the lines that he has, like his petrol stuff this week, is great. I thought that when they moved into Coronation Street, when they moved into the flats,
We haven't even seen their house.
no, we've got no idea where that. We know that they live there. It's totally pointless them moving in.
I want to see them decorating their house.
Yeah, if you're going to say you don't like Brian, let's at least hopefully give them the chance to have a proper storyline, and then we'll see.
I agree. I do agree with you that I don't like him because he's not in it enough.
Yeah.
I don't dislike him. I take it back. I don't dislike him. I never meant that. I just don't care.
He's not in it enough.
Yeah.
He's funny. I like him as a comic relief character.
But I don't like it when they make him out to be a bumbling fool and use
Aren't
that
all teachers
to
stupid?
make that stupid comments about teachers because it makes me so mad.
So, Katie Kavanagh has said about Julie, there's 3 words to describe her: sparkly, romantic, and sagacious. I don't know what that means.
Wise?
Yeah, maybe. I don't think anything irritates me about Julie. I couldn't play her if anything irritated me. She does talk a lot sometimes. I'm completely knackered by the end of the day of playing her, and I just want to go home and moan for an hour. My favourite quality about Julie is her sense of kind of fun and her irrepressible kind of joy, and I love playing that. I think that sums up Julie really well. She is.
I wonder how much she's like Julie in real life.
I can imagine her being absolutely the same, but I'm sure she's not.
The thing I like about Julie, as apart from her personality, is I like her style.
Yeah, she's always.
I love her little retro clothes that she wears and her vintagey look.
Yeah, if her and Brian do get married, and I'm sure they will.
I will just have kittens. I can't wait to see what her wedding dress would look like.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. So Gemma has looked up sagacious on Google.
Having or showing keen mental discernment and good judgment. What rubbish!
Good judgment?
No, sorry, Katie, you're wrong. That's the charm of Julie.
Yeah.
She throws herself headlong into things she's got no idea about.
Yeah.
That's why we like her.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Kirsty.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So good on Julie. Good character. Let's
keep it up.
Keep it up. Keep up the good work.
Let's see actually where she lives, please.
Yes, please, more Julie storylines. Away from the factory, let's see them properly develop them. That's what I want. And that's about it. So, a bit of a short character profile. Let's go to the cabin.
Interesting. So funny listening to these old ones. You're right, very low so far.
Some very interesting things to say, didn't you?
Yes, I mean... I not about what do you mean about talking about the school? Me not minding school stories. Liking Brian.
Yeah, I think Brian's great.
I definitely did enjoy Brian a little bit more in the olden days. I don't dislike him now, but I was a massive Brian fan back in the early days. I know.
We had a conversation about whether he was sort of a character for the ages, and you were very sure that he was, and I said I don't know enough about him, and you also thought that they were the new Stan and Hilda, or they had the potential to be.
Well, that didn't really work.
It didn't pan out.
But who'd have thought that all these years later we would still have Brian in the programme? And I know he had a bit of time off, but sadly Julie has been nowhere to be seen for 5+ years now. So let's just have a little reminder about what happened to Julie after where we just got to in the old profile. And she was in the midst of we were all in the midst of the Tyrone and Kirsty storyline back in early 2013, weren't we? The domestic abuse story. It seems like so long ago, it's crazy. I suppose it was, wasn't it? It was 10 years ago.
Bit, yeah.
And Julie starts to suspect that she's kind of backed the wrong horse a little bit because she's very much on Kirsty's side, the abuser. And she kind of she starts doing a bit of digging and questioning, which earns her a slap in the face from Kirsty. And I remember at the time that was when Katie Kavanagh was pregnant, and the character was wearing lots of big capes, wasn't she?
I absolutely loved Julie.
And I've got a vivid picture of Kirsty slapping Julie wearing this magnificent.
Yeah, that was when she was briefly renamed as Julie Cape.
Yes, not Julie Carp. And because of that pregnancy, that imminent baby dropping, the reason given for Julie to leave Weatherfield is classic excuse: go and see her mum, who, classic reason, has broken her hip.
Well, now, was this the pregnancy that was worth her time? Because she birthed a child that would later go on to.
I don't know. No, I don't think. I don't know. Is it? Oh, I don't know. We'll talk about that later. You're right. I'm not sure how many children she's had, but yeah, one of them has become quite prolific, haven't they?
One of them went on to become a movie star, and the other ones are just disappointments.
I can't remember that. I really can't
Just
remember
like
that.
Michael
Really
and I to our
interesting.
parents.
So she ends up coming back towards the end of the year anyway, and interestingly linked to I suppose something that's been going on recently in Coronation Street. We're currently recording this. If you're watching it in the far-flung stretches of the future, we're in 2022 at the moment, because Brian and Julie look into fostering, much like Imran and Toya had been doing until you know what happened to Imran. But Brian didn't like the idea of being a foster dad because he's had enough of teaching, had enough of children. He's like, I've been a teacher all
is
my
like
life.
being a foster parent to 30 plus children, all of whom don't listen to a word you say.
Yeah, so he's just got fed up really, and he ends up secretly applying for a museum job in Wales. And he even goes so far as to tell the foster agent that he doesn't want children. And when Julie finds out, she's like, right, I've had it with you then, mister. Dumps him and leaves Weatherfield. So Brian
leaves
just...
Weatherfield.
He leaves Weatherfield and Brian is... free and
He
single
goes
again
off.
and
He
childless.
leaves, and
this is
she's
really,
stuck in Weatherfield.
yeah, and this is interesting with what we're seeing again at the moment, aren't we? Where he's making these decisions to go and he wants to move somewhere else. This time it's Cornwall. It's very flighty, that Brian, isn't he?
This is very interesting because it seems a bit out of character for Brian to want to up sticks and leave kind of so impetuously. But actually, it's not. It's completely within his gets bored, wants to leave, wants to go somewhere. Thinks the grass is always greener in Cornwall, which
probably is, to be fair.
Yeah. It's the sunny south coast. 2014, Julie helps out Dennis.
Oh, Dennis Tanner
when he returns to the street, and they plot to pretend to have a row because he's trying to woo Rita back, but she's not having it. So they decide to kind of have this argument to kind of entice her to take pity on Dennis and ask him back. But actually, Julie accidentally tells Norris what the plan is, and he lets Rita know. They get rumbled.
Julie.
Now, this was also when they had Victoria Court Fitness, which I loved. Mm-hmm. I don't know that the choreo stars particularly enjoyed running on a treadmill while reading out their lines, so that got scrapped pretty quick.
Do you think that's maybe why the gym did get scrapped? Because do you think they just organised a coup in the choreo cast? Didn't come to work out.
One of my long-term life goals, get fit, live forever, become an OBE, is to create a YouTube video compilation of all the times that people on Coronation Street, and sadly because of gender roles it's mostly women, try to fold clothes and make a complete hash of it. So if they can't even fold clothes and say their lines properly, I'm not quite sure how anybody expects them to walk in a straight line on a treadmill.
Well, it was
But
Katie
didn't work
Kavanagh's
out,
turn,
did it?
wasn't it? Mid-2014.
Yes, she joined the gym, and Dev, who was it? Dev, Sharif, I can't remember who else. They were in charge.
Working there as well, maybe. I don't
He was
remember.
doing drugs there, wasn't he? Steroids.
Oh, yeah,
or
that's
being
right.
accused of it. I can't remember. She joins the gym, and Dev gives her induction and insults her by talking about her weight.
And then we all know what happens when two characters that never really interact start having a bit of beef with each other.
They start dating.
Yes.
Mary feels like a gooseberry, and she gets jealous.
Yeah, I think this was at the time where Mary was the nanny of young Adi and
That's
Asher.
right, yeah, that's right.
And she and Mary doesn't like the idea that another woman is muscling in on her turf. Not that there was anything romantic between Dev and Mary, but I think she feels that her role is being usurped somewhat.
That's true, and also we know that there's still a very strong bond between Dev and Mary on the street, and they're always chatting to each other, and Dev and Asha and Ardy always really nice to Mary and recognise her role in their development as children.
It's not completely out of character for Dev to love them and leave them when it comes to women, even if it is on the platonic sense. So 2015 was Julie's final year on Coronation Street, unfortunately, and she just carries on unwittingly winding Mary up by getting involved in the twins' upbringing. But then when early 2015 Dev declares that he is going to Mumbai for a bit to visit his relatives, Julie, Mary and also Sophie, why not, clash over who's going to be looking after the shop, and Julie thinks it should be her because she's going out with Dev, and Mary's like, no, I've known him longer. Sophie's like, I'll run the shop.
I've got a clipboard, so...
Yeah, exactly. Then we also had in 2015, Julie gets involved in the Underworld minibus crash, which until I did a little bit of research for this character profile, I'd completely forgotten it happened.
It was quite a pivotal moment.
At the time.
We had Steve, that was the start of his depression, that was the start of... Was it the start of the Tracy and Carla feud? I can't remember.
No, the start.
Or was it like the moment that ended it? Because there was definitely a moment where Carla and Tracy were both on the edge of a cliff.
Yeah, Tracy rescues
physically
Carla,
and
doesn't she, the other way
metaphorically.
around.
Yeah, it was really important that this is another thing I want us to do, which is storyline podcasts. Because the storyline of the minibus is actually quite interesting, but largely forgotten.
Yeah, and I don't think Julie got... I mean, I may well be remembering this completely wrong, but I don't think that Julie got particularly...
I think quite a lot of people just went, get off the bus. I'm off the bus. I'm not involved in the bus anymore.
But it all kicks off for Julie later on in the year because Brian Packham returns to Weatherfield, and he is absolutely intent on getting back together with Julie.
But she's a catch.
She is. She's a total catch. She's glam.
She's glam.
She's got that 50s
nice
chic,
style.
hasn't
she? She's very, she's friendly. She's happy. She's motherly. She looks after you. She
Who
cares
wouldn't
about
come
people.
back from Wales for somebody like Julie?
I would.
But unfortunately for Brian, she remains loyal to Dev. That is until Talisa, a charity worker who Dev met in India, shows up on his doorstep, and he is clearly smitten with this woman. And indeed, Julie hears him declaring his love for her.
Whoops.
Yeah, bad move, Dev. Unfortunately for him, it does backfire somewhat when she tells him she's gay, which Julie just finds hilarious, and she ends up dumping Dev, and he's just left sad and alone, and all getting warmed up for whoever came next.
You don't bother trying to have more than one woman on the go, because they will all just leave you.
Yeah, exactly. So bad luck, Dev. And Julie takes the opportunity to rekindle her romance with Brian, and they go on a round the world trip. Yeah, and then they move to Wales together. But apparently, when he comes back again, I think maybe even the following year, he's split up with her. So and I think that's possibly, and you haven't heard much of Julie since, even though she's the sister, I want to say, of Eileen, half sisterish kind of thing. She doesn't get mentioned much. I think she does still have her photo up in one of the many frames that are around number 11. So she hasn't been completely forgotten. But she's for all extents and purposes dead to everybody on Coronation Street.
I really think
character profile is important to put up again.
Brian's floundering. We know that he's having a bit of an issue at the moment with Kathy. Not sure how that's gonna pan out, but if ever was there a opportunity for Julie to return to the street, it could be right about now.
I would love it, because I did think that they made a really fun couple together. I mean, Kathy and Brian were fairly well suited, to be honest, but I don't think that Corrie really ever wanted to invest in the pair of them.
It's annoying.
Yeah, it is. It really, really is. But the other thing that I remember about that particular term for Brian is, do you remember they had like a high noon stare-off scene between him and Dev? One was at one end of the street and the other was at the other, and they were kind of like mortal enemies, all fighting over Julie for a bit. I think we quite enjoyed that at the time. I don't know,
because we know the actor who plays Brian,
Peter Gunny,
correct, is a bit of a ham in real life. He's really funny, and I think that he. We talked in this profile, if you've just been listening to the older version, talked a lot about how you really enjoyed Brian's character. And certainly since he's returned without Julie, he's had a lot more to do, but still being a bit hampered. And I'm not quite sure by what. But
I think he's kind of put into the box of, now is his in the box of he's a comedy character, so just wheel him out, say something silly or pompous or whatever, then put him back again. But when they've given him the opportunity to do some serious scenes, like with Abby's witness statement last year, for example, he has really shone. Yeah,
so I think that if they brought Julie back, I really do, when I listened to the podcast back, we recorded and you were like going, I think that could be the new Stan and Hilda. I kind of made fun of you. But really, they do have potential.
Yeah, they really, really do.
I mean, they're sort of an older, middle-aged, childless couple. And although Stan and Hilda had children, on the show, most of their tenure was them being without kids, talking, you know, their adventures and their strife and their struggles, but they loved each other, and Julie and Brian definitely had that chemistry together, and they were both kind of funny in their own way, but together I think they worked really well.
Yeah, and I think if they were to bring Katie Kavanagh back, she would possibly have the star power, for lack of a better word, to make Coronation Street not just shove him in a corner. And I'm not saying that Melanie Hill didn't. Blimey, she's a massive actress, but I think having somebody as, you know, glam and beautiful as Katie, of Julie, back in the show, it might give them a chance to make Brian shine again.
The trouble with Melanie Hill's character of Kathy is that it felt like she settled for Brian. Because she was sort of she was dating Roy and then he rejected her. But I don't feel like Julie ever settled for Brian. I think that
that's a really good point.
Got on with him, and it doesn't really matter how glam or whatever you are. But I think that Julie's was so energetic and fun. But I also think that Kathy is as well. You know, they both have that kind of joie de vivre, and I don't know, Brian can be a bit of a stick in the mud sometimes.
Yeah, you're right.
So so we've got.
Well, I was just going to say we've been talking a bit about Katie/Julie coming back to Coronation Street, but and she has done some bits of TV work since Coronation Street, but it seems to have been mostly small TV roles. Like I remember seeing her in an episode of Birds of a Feather. She was a teacher of one of the women's sons, I think. Her last TV role was in a program called Not Going Out, which was on last year. But she has done lots of stage work, including Iris in 2016 and Ashes in 2017. She was the voice of the Iceland ads as well for a little bit. But it seems like a lot of the time these days she kind of spends in Hollywood. She's moved over to California because her son Noah has got this massive career there, and he was the boy in A Quiet Place, which I think I might have known that in the distant past, but reading it again yesterday when I was putting my notes together for this, I was like, that blew my mind. This is Katie Kavanagh's son.
Yes, because
aspiring young child actor of America.
Now, obviously, we all know that A Quiet Place is Emily Blunt and her husband
Jim from The Office. So
Emily Blunt's English. I don't know if there's a connection there, if they got in by, kind of appealing to Emily Blunt's English side and saying, hey, the Queen, isn't she cool or whatever. So I don't know how she got that, how Noah got that role. But yeah, I think
I like that film.
The continual invasion of the British into Hollywood is going very smoothly. Well done.
But I mean, it just means to me, I guess, that maybe Katie Kavanagh isn't necessarily gagging for plentiful TV roles or indeed an extended stint in Coronation Street. The UK is one of the biggest programmes.
I don't know how long ago, I can't remember how long ago A Quiet Place was. I still don't think I've seen A Quiet Place too.
You have. We definitely watched that. I saw it at the cinema.
I don't remember.
It wasn't as good.
Wasn't that good? So Noah, I think, is getting to the age where maybe he doesn't need his mum to be his agent anymore.
That's a good point.
Maybe Katie Kavanagh would like to sort of now she's got empty nest syndrome, does she? I don't know. Come back to Coronation Street. It doesn't matter what you're up to. We'll have you back in our heartbeat. We love you. I love Julie Carp. I love Katie Kavanagh. I think she brought such a warmth and friendliness and just a big kind of jolly persona to the character.
I think that
nobody really like her.
No, there's not, and I think that the Factory is really missing big characters at the moment. I mean, you got Beth, who kind of takes the role, but she's not the same because she's just a bit cowy, isn't she, Beth?
Yeah.
And the knicker stitching side of the Factory it's just dwindled away to nothing.
I
and
think
having
the only
Julie
person
back would be brilliant.
Comparable to her is Fizz, but Fizz has her own family to deal with. Julie doesn't have children. She doesn't have, as we know, maybe at the moment, a boyfriend or a husband. I think she's a really nice mother hen character, kind of a bit like Hayley in a way, sort of somebody who kind of adopts people as she goes through life.
Yeah, she's very well-meaning.
Putting everybody under her wing. Yeah, seeing the good in people, encouraging them and buoying them up. And there's nobody like that on the street right now.
Yeah.
We really need it.
We've been watching some of her older
Yes,
episodes
we
just
do.
recently, haven't we? In the early 2000s, and I'm definitely loving her there. She doesn't seem to be a massive character. She seems to be more of a side character to some of the.
Well, she had a big dramatic storyline with her dad,
with
which we talked about just when we recorded this, about him having a stroke and turning out to be a paedophile.
Yes.
Yeah,
But,
not
he's
related.
good, and you know, Eileen has been underused of late since feeling as well, so I definitely say bring back Julie, but who knows whether it'll happen. Her exit was announced in 2015 on the 4th of February, and Katie said, "I've decided it's time to take a break from the cobbles and pursue other projects and opportunities. I've loved every minute in the world of Julie Carp, and I'm not ruling out a return to the street in the future. However, I am looking forward to a new challenge and a pair of flat shoes." Doesn't mention anything about her son being a Hollywood star, but if you'd have asked her back then, do you want your son to get an Oscar? She'd probably said, go on then.
Did he get an Oscar?
I don't think he did, but he's only young.
Let's
he
give
has
him an
potential. Yeah. Stuart Blackburn, the producer at the time, said, "Julie Carp has become a warm, wonderful and eccentric character, able to raise a laugh and a tear in the same scene.
True.
And everyone at Corrie wishes Katie all the very best, and hopefully, as far as Julie is concerned, the cobbles haven't seen the last of her." So Stuart Blackburn believed in her and thought, even though he was soon to depart and be taken over by Kate Oates, he thought
Now-
there could still be a chance to see her again, and I am all for that.
One thing I'm not really sure about, which I feel like is more of an insider thing, is like how much actors are kind of indebted or linked to the producers that hired them originally. Now we know that you know, Kate Oates introduced a lot of big characters, and you've got Stuart Blackburn who introduced lots of characters, Ian McLeod, etc., etc. How easy is it to get back to the show if the producer that hired you originally is not there anymore?
I can't even remember who was producing the show when Julie first came in, but I don't
Well,
think
it's not
it makes...
Stuart Blackburn anymore, Michael.
Well, no, but he didn't hire her.
No,
though.
well, I know, but he's saying goodbye to her. He was there. He was the producer when she was there.
Yeah.
Don't know if he was the producer that hired her, but we've had, you know, we've had Kate Oates, and now we've got Ian McLeod. So, you know, who knows who is next? Is that person going to sort of think, oh, I know who I want? Or kind of once the producer that hired you is gone, just the chances of you coming back plummet? I don't know.
I wouldn't have thought
I'm just
so.
speculating. I'm really,
Yeah.
you know, it's interesting to think.
Yeah, I think
guess it
most
depends
years
also.
have some Corrie comebacks, don't they?
The
of
other thing
sorts, and they don't
is,
all come from recently.
I don't know who the producer will be in the future. Is it going to be somebody who works on Corrie now? Are they going to hire from within? Are they going to get somebody who's produced a different soap?
Yeah, maybe.
Don't know.
Maybe. Who knows? We will have to wait and see.
Love
but
her.
I fear we've been gone off topic.
Really
Really
enjoy her
enjoyed
to
Julie.
come
She was
back.
great fun at the time, absolutely. So it was nice being able to have a little bit of a revisit of her this week. So thanks for listening, everybody. I suppose that's it. You done?
I'm done.
We're done. Goodbye.